and like, and like, yeah, that's pretty much half the book. Boom, bam. She really did blue ball me. Giant, scary lizard monster. Oh, ooh, secret societies, what's going on? Hi, hello, it's your boy Nate. I read books because reading is sexy. And if you're not reading, you're not sexy. Sorry. It's wrap-up time. It's wrap-up time. And let me tell you, we went full-on bonanzas with a few digital reads as well. Let me tell you, my summer reading, kaboom, bam. Just to preface though, I tried to do a lot of thickies because one, I had more downtime, which was nice. I don't think I went out too much in August, and I just wanted to get rid of a lot of books that I didn't want to be reading in public so much. Don't ask me why. Anyway, okay, here we go. Y'all ready? Here we go. And as always, these are little flash reviews of the books. You'll get more in-depth detail of the books in later reading vlogs. So stay tuned, stay tuned. Okay, here we go. Started off the month with The Fraud, Zadie Smith. There's already a vlog on this, so won't talk about it, but just want to say I'm gonna do either White Teeth or On Beauty. DNF'd this. It was just the wrong place, wrong time to be picking this up, but this is Zadie Smith doing historical fiction in basically 3 different narratives wrapped up in this big baddie. Just didn't work for me. Historical fiction's really tough, especially Victorian era fiction. Just not a fan, just not a fan. But I think Zadie Smith is incredibly smart. There are portions of the book, the Jamaica bits, that I thought were really interesting in sort of rewriting history. If you are into historical fiction, the Victorian era, this one's for you. This one's got your name on it. Okay, my second DNF was Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I received this as an ARC. Yeah, by August, I was like, I want the spooky reads. Give me the spooky reads. Went into this 60%. There were like 2 or 3 spooky moments. And I was like, what? Why? Why is this happening? But we get Mexican Gothic horror with mysticism and witchery and cults within the film industry and this very specific Nazi cult leader that was involved in filmmaking, and these people who work at a film studio try to conjure him up, investigating more about the cult. This was just so oddly paced that I just did not enjoy it at all. There's just way too much setup for her characters when they didn't need that much time. Like, it took 30% of the way through to establish the characters in the text, and then another 20% took to sort of set up the background. It just took way too long. It took way too long, and there were only like 3 scary moments, and I was just like, not worth it, not worth my time. So DNF'd that. Sorry. I've been pretty good. I've been pretty good at DNFing books this month, also because these were major thickies. But also, don't ask me why. I DNF'd this like 100 pages shy of finishing, so anyway. But yeah, if you're not enjoying a book, if the book is not serving its purpose for you, why? Why bother? Life is way too short. Too short. Next up, I read Blackouts by Justin Torres. It's about 2 men, a boy and a, well, not really a boy, but a boy in the eyes of a dying man. Both gay, and just their really long, strung out conversation that feels like the Bible, the gay Bible. It covers history, it covers so many elements, hardships, heartbreaks of the gay experience, just tied up beautifully in this a text that feels holy, that feels important. And though I felt a bit detached from it, I thought Torres's voice was really striking. There was something refreshing about it that I enjoyed. Yes, it's out by FSG October 10th. I think a very interesting addition to the Gaelic canon. Yeah. My third DNF of the month was Elvis and Me by Priscilla Presley. And this was not by choice. I lost it on the train. But for what it's worth, I think the first 20 pages I read were great. She opens up about Presley's death and how devastating it was. She just captures the immense heartbreak of losing the love of your life. Did not mean to DNF that, but I ordered it again. So it's coming to me, don't know when, but I'll finish it hopefully before the end of the year. Because I lost it, I moved on to an ARC, which I read on my phone. I read Godzilla, and Godzilla raids again. Yes, the original text for the giant, scary lizard monster. And I did not know that it was YA. So it was really cool to just like read what Japanese kids from the 50s and 60s were reading. And yeah, it was really cool to just like dip into the source material. It's like, I always knew about Godzilla. You know, it's just like one of those iconic things. But I don't think I've ever sat through a Godzilla movie. Anyway, it was really fun. Most of the writing was written like YA, like really young adult. So there was a lot of like, roar, and like, ah, and like, roar. Yeah, that's pretty much half the book. So it was fun. It was a good time. Next up, did another thickie. We did On the Savage Side by Tiffany McDaniel, following two sisters, covering drug abuse, sexual abuse, and sort of the mysterious disappearances of girls within this town in Ohio. Really cool. I haven't read anything like this before. It felt like YA for adults because there were pictures. Look. There's a spider. Do you see the spider there? Really cool. The spider and sort of these images act as foreshadowing for really spooky moments in the book. It's just a real thrill through McDaniel's beautiful prose, her dark subject matter and dark elements, and really the focus on how a family survives together, how a group of women survive together through these mysterious murders and disappearances. And also, the book is narrated by a river. Yeah, it just felt like a really fresh narrative, and I appreciated this a lot. But yeah, it was fun, and like a fun, thick read, but yet I didn't feel like it was heavy at all. Also, I'm not a big, thicky person. I'm a tiny books person. It was like a real page turner, so enjoyed this. Yeah. Then I had an ARC of Normal Women by Ainslie Hogarth. I know Mother Thing was really popular last year, and I was like, okay, let me try her out. This follows a woman who has a child, but is so uncomfortable and uncertain about who she is as a person and as a housewife, and so goes to this yoga community center that is somewhat culty. Also, I don't know why the cults are following me, okay? After reading Rouge, so many cult books, and I was without my knowledge, and I was just like, what? Ooh, secret societies, what's going on? Yeah, I thought it was okay. I think there were a lot of thoughts on motherhood, postpartum. Some of the writing was a bit strong. It just felt like overall a 3-star read for me. It just feels like an extension pack for Mother Thing, though I haven't read it yet. But I know it sort of deals with the same themes. And here she is again exploring those same things, but more and more. But if you enjoyed Mother Thing, I think you'll like this one. Any mothers out there, I think this one is interesting. Next up, I read The Disappeared by Andrew Porter, a collection of short stories surrounding all in Texas. Couples, professors, families, and members of these positions that feel like they're disappearing, that they're fading away. Very strong collection, feels very Raymond Carvery. There's an emotional distance that Porter has, very similar in sort of the detached way that Carver's prose works in. But there's also like a heart to them. There's a warmth as well. They don't feel too cold. Yeah, I enjoyed dipping in and out of this between my other reads. But I want to say a very strong collection of short stories. Then I had a buddy read with Sophie from Bibliosophie. We did The Importance of Being Iceland by Eileen Miles. So I've come to the conclusion that I love the way that Eileen Miles thinks and talks. I just don't like the way they write. Minus their poetry. Their poetry's good, outstanding, because the staccato rhythm just works perfectly. But their writing, my gosh. But this is basically a collection of essays surrounding art and different artists. There's an interview with them and Daniel Day-Lewis. There's a lot of love for Barbara Kruger, Alex Katz, a lot of New York artists. Ooh, there's a fun bit where they go on a road trip with Bjork. I thought that was fun. But just their writing is just too all over the place and unedited, and what these essays, like to call them essays is way too generous. If anything, they're more journal entries for themselves, like their private journals that haven't been looked over. And there was not an editor for this at all. Maybe in curating and compiling the essays, but the specific pieces themselves, unedited, unfiltered. And that's why I like them in conversation and in interviews and speaking and stuff, because that's fun. But here, too generous to call them essays. If you see this in the bookstore, definitely read the Daniel Day-Lewis interview and the Bjork road trip bit. They're a lot of fun. Eileen Miles, Importance of Being Iceland. Then I read a Lispector because it was Woman in Translation Month, and we did The Apple in the Dark by Clarice Lispector. What? Why did I say it like that? I read The Apple in the Dark by Clarice Lispector. With any Lispector, a lot to unpack. It's basically Plato's cave and the man basically finding out how to be a man again while also falling in love. So you have sort of the lean plot of The Apprenticeship or The Book of Pleasures with The Chandelier. It's a mix, I feel, of those two books. Lispector has expressed that this is one of her favorite novels of the bunch, what she feels is like her most successful novel. I beg to disagree. I mean, I respect our Lord and Savior, but there are just two things that felt way too muddled in what she was trying to focus on and achieve in terms of man as God, man as creator, man as thinker and thinker for himself, and man as lover, and tying all those together just didn't feel clean and cutthroat enough to be able to enjoy. There's just something different in here that just muddled everything, and I think it was her focus on plot that made it this way. Two, the other issue is I think the translation was just mediocre at best. So I wanted to say that in October, there'll be a new translation of this, headed by Benjamin Mosier. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out, but wanted to read this before the new translation and sort of compare the two. But still a very interesting read. For people starting out with Lispector, this one's definitely on the lower tier, Apple in the Dark. Next up, I read Exquisite Mariposa by Fiona Allison Duncan, gifted to me by Renee from So I Read This Book. Thank you, love you. This one's fun. It's a sad internet girl set in LA. You can definitely tell she read way too much Babbitts and Didion while writing this. Investigates what does it mean to be real through romance, job, money, lots and lots of stuff about money and just being broke all the time. Yeah, it was a real joy and very surprised that not a lot of people have talked about this. There's like two booktubers, one of which is CJ, that have talked about this. It feels like a cult classic, and I'm surprised that like there isn't enough underground love for it. Had a fun time with this. It's a bit wishy-washy in some ways, pithy, but a lot of fun and humorous in a bunch of places. But yes, if you want sad internet girl summer read, this is a good one. If you are riding out those last waves of summer. You know, I don't consider first day of fall to be September or, you know, when PSL comes out. It's when I see the leaves changing, okay? Like, it should not be hot in fall. I don't agree with that. And my body doesn't agree with that. Okay, next up, I had an ARC of New Millennium Boyz by Alex Kazemi. This is if Larry Clark wrote a YA book for like young adult readers. And I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot in there, not for the faint of heart, but is so trapped within nostalgia that it almost feels like it came from the 90s leading up to the turn of the millennium. But yes, it is the dark side of Y2K. You know, it's really interesting that like right now we're in this like celebration of Y2K, but there's some shitty times, let me tell you, in terms of like misogyny and homophobia. And this book is really, really rich in all of that. But yes, definitely gives a voice to the sort of incel depraved male narrator of that time period, which I feel like source materials have like leaned into, but like didn't go there. For example, Downtown, and there's great mention of it in the book as well. And I love that show. Downtown's great. Recently watched it, I think for spring. Psychedelic, trippy show set in like late 90s, early 2000s of a group of teens in New York just like making their way downtown. For fans of Dennis Cooper, Larry Clark, Harmony Korine, you'll definitely enjoy this. Then I did The Boy and the Dog by Seishu Hase. Kind of did this as a buddy read with Modern Ajima, Yena. I just read it at a different time, she read it at a different time, and we talked about the book, essentially. Major tears. I'm in the camp, the Fran Lebowitz camp, that's like, why would you willingly let an animal into your home? But I've turned around. I love me a dog. I love me a cutie. This dog follows different narratives of outsiders that adopt him, and they all go through an incredible hardship and continue to pass off this dog. And it's his tail, his long, beautiful tail. By the end of it, you're absolutely heartbroken because you've developed this bond with the dog, and as every outsider you encounter, they give a new name to this dog, and it's just a real beautiful look at why we claim the things that we claim, why we name the things that we name, and why it's so important that we leave legacy, but also this eternal longing to just like leave something behind, be known, even when we're far long gone. Just beautifully done. It reads like YA, and yeah, gonna say it, it's Japanese Shiloh. I've said it before. Japanese Shiloh, so sweet. If you're looking for a quickie, a nice quickie with some great emotional beats, this one will do it for you. Very sweet, very sad, very beautiful. Ooh, dog lovers, pick it up. It's good. Then I was like, why not do philosophy? So I did Non-Things by Byung. I briefly talked about this in a live that Kiran and I did in episode 2 of our live, so check it out. But looks at AI and sort of the dangers of it in the sense that AI is creating a de-caring society. We are caring less about our physical objects, which I don't necessarily agree with, given that this was published in 2020 and the pandemic, the heart of the pandemic happened in 2020. And in that time, I feel like a lot of people were buying furniture and just sort of beautifully representing the home of the homebody. And people were focusing on that a lot. So people were buying furniture and stuff. Weird thing to look at. But with his ideas on AI and with the writer strike and everything and big media companies trying to wipe out the writer with AI, this is just really interesting. What I really appreciate, aside from his boomer ideas, are the explorations of how we can care, going back into the silences of things and closing our eyes more and meditating and just taking the time to care about slowness of life and the care of life. This just comes to mind, and I've mentioned it before, but I remember there was an app in San Francisco where if you didn't have time to do your laundry, you could ask someone to do the laundry on this app. But I think not doing that laundry, there's a loss in the care, because it's the act of doing laundry, waiting for it, that you're given that hour and a half to focus cleaning other parts of the house, or if you go to a laundromat, you're there to read a book. So there's that idea of care there that Chul, I think, considers really beautiful and sacred. Some things I found interesting, some things I found way too boomerish, but I've been meaning to read his work for a while, and yeah, this is really interesting. Good brain to be in. After that, I had an ARC of Brainwyrms by Alison Rumfitt. As y'all know, I loved Rumfitt's novel that I read last year, Tell Me I'm Worthless. That was fantastic. This one about a trans woman who bombs our narrator Frankie's workplace, and Frankie tries to cope with the carnage, been drinking, fucking strangers, and pushing away her friends. But she meets Vanya, who sort of foils her, but also is witness to Frankie's odd thing where she has worms in her body. And the whole book is definitely about the interior terrors and how we exercise them in safe and dangerous ways. How does it all come out? But I think where it loses itself is it just felt way too Twittery. It felt like Alison Rumfitt was definitely on Twitter way too long during the pandemic, and it turned into this pretty twee internet book. I don't think some of the elements worked very well and definitely watered down the themes of the book. I felt like this was marketed as body horror, but it ended up being more yucky and all about kinks and underground kinks in that community, which I think was interesting because I don't think enough people talk about kinks and what these things are. Something that, are they guilty pleasures? How much shame is around them? So it was very interesting to read about the kink stuff as Rumfitt brought light to it. But I thought this was gonna be horror, and it was not horror. And there was only one body horror scene, and it was really disappointing. I definitely recommend Tell Me I'm Worthless. That one is fantastic. Haunted house, ghosts, with such smart reckonings on the social political turmoil of modern day UK. But this one, she was just having fun with this one when I wanted the horror. No horror. This is out October 5th by Tor Nightfire. It's transgressive though. If you like transgressive lit, this one will hit you home. Okay, next up I read a play. We did Consent by Nina Rain. Looks at law as well as emotional reckoning on a very traumatic event between friends. They're all split up about how they feel about this very specific incident that harms essentially all of them. Strong, very strong, emotional, just like the writing and the beats were just all there and just perfect. I ate this up, finished it within a day, and by the end I was just like, whew, I don't think I would have survived this live, but it's a lot. Definitely read the bio for subject matter before you dip into this, given what it's about. Really good balance of characters. I think Rain does a beautiful job of juggling a lot of voices and creating so much tension between everybody and creating very explosive moments. Yes. Then I read Tremor by Teju Cole. I think this is my second Teju Cole, but it's about what kind of professor is he? Also, just want to say, it has been so difficult retaining all this information. I read a lot. But hey, I think I'm doing an okay job, okay? Get a pat on the back for me. Okay, and I'm losing light, so I want to be quick. So, yes, he's a professor of photography coming from Ghana to Boston. And coming into this, I thought it was a novel. less of a novel in terms of construction. It definitely feels like a super long lecture by a professor who's telling you very interesting things, spanning across different forms of art, the Black experience, but also about his own history and his own upbringing. And it's just so beautifully layered, and it feels like classroom experience, a lecture, and it's done so beautifully. My issue with Teju Cole's writing is that I feel like he's very distant and cold in his writing, so we really don't empathize with the characters as strongly as I think he writes them out to be. But there's a lot of interesting things here, brain-wise and thought-wise, about the Black experience, racism, the microaggressions that our narrator undergoes, and art stuff as well, spanning from like Interstellar to Van Gogh's paintings to a bunch of other really cool things. I think what he created was sort of the idea of learning as listening, and just the epitome of that experience, which I thought was brilliant within the novel form. Frank Ocean, Solange, there's just a lot of delicious bits and moments in this book culturally that just made me appreciate it a lot, and sort of the interesting ways in which people tell narratives. Teju Cole, he's still got it. He's still got it. This is out by Random House, October 17th. Look out for it. And then, yes, okay, we're here. My last book of the month is Roman Stories by Jhumpa Lahiri. Still sort of doing this as a buddy read, really easy to reference given that they're short stories, with Kat from Kat's Field Notes and Monica from Dog-Eared Musings. Gonna be honest, this is aight. I'm enjoying the conversations that Monica and Kat and I are having around the book a lot more than the book itself. But just watched Kat's latest video, and she described the stories as sort of muted, and that's my issue with these stories. These stories about the minority, the expat, and the outsider, all within Rome, they're so muted in the way that we don't get to penetrate sort of the core of each story. Lahiri's writing is like beautiful, but too much and for too long, she'll beat around the bush and leave us as bystander, which I think works in, I want to say, half of the stories, where we're put into the position of bystander to realize how the microaggressions occurring within the book and how they ultimately affect our narrators and create trauma and create so much tension in the daily lives of expats, minority groups who like come and live in another city. I will say this has been a very interesting experience, given that I am an expat myself, and I related a lot. Day-to-day cultural differences, and also just the emptiness and loneliness that occurs when you live abroad by choice. There's a few good ones in here. I think all of them work great alone. This is out by Knopf, October 10th. Roman Stories, Jhumpa Lahiri. We'll also mention, this has been my post-Italia Jhumpa Lahiri. I've only ever read Interpretive Maladies, but very interesting. I think based on Kat and Monica's rec, I will definitely pick up Whereabouts sometime in the future. It was all right. It was all right. I didn't hate it. I wanted to love it more, but Lahiri just didn't take me there. She really did blue ball me. Okay, and oh my god, this video is 40 minutes and I didn't even talk about movies, but real quick, the first movies that come to mind, I did like a major run of Pedro Almodovar films, and I loved them. It was just great for artists. You know, there's some hits, there were some misses, more melodramatic than others. Will say, I think my favorite out of the bunch was Law of Desire. It is just so gay and so good and so beautiful. And the end, oh, so good. And of course, you know, I've watched Pain and Glory and this Under the Skin, or The Skin I Live In. I think it's The Skin I Live In, which I watched like a long time ago. He was just auteur that I really wanted to look into more, and it was just really nice to watch all those films. I also watched Past Lives, and I wrote a newsletter bit. I'll leave my newsletter link down below, but I ugly cried 2 hours after that, and it was so good. And I immediately wanted to watch the movie again. right after I finished it. Like, it was so, so good. I loved it. And I also watched, what was it, 2 days ago, You Hurt My Feelings with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, which was so good as well. I just loved the writing in that so much. But follows a dysfunctional family, a therapist, a writer, and their son who works at a weed shop. But Julia's character has this beautiful sister relationship that was just really just tender, and yeah, just like the emotional beats were all there, the humor was great. Julia is just always great, and yeah, it was a lot of fun, But yeah, that's my quick movie update. If you want to see more of the updates, I have a letterbox. It's linked downstairs for you. Yeah, I watched way too many movies. Like, I'll give you a quick count. I watched 25 movies. Yeah. I had a good run. Anyway, as always, thanks for being here. Let me know if you've read any of these books. Please share your thoughts, what you loved about them, what you hated about them. You mean a lot. As always, be well, do good work, keep in touch.